She had the world at her fingertips.
She was very outgoing, very fearless. She was just a smart young lady.
The sky was the limit.
And it looked like she'd found the love of her life, too.
She introduced him to the family.
She was taken with this guy. She loved him.
Until tragedy stole her too soon.
Blood was coming out her mouth.
911, do you need police?
Just a roller coaster of emotions surged through my body.
Detectives move quickly to identify a suspect.
The name came from another resident that did not want to be identified.
He wanted something more than friendship.
And the killer's explanation would be full of excuses.
He said he woke up in a haze.
The drugs made him go crazy.
But were they also enough for him to get away with murder?
It was a slap in the face.
It'll never be okay. He knew exactly what he was doing.
We're just friends.
October 2nd, 2015. It's Friday night in Charlotte, North Carolina, a thriving metropolis of more than 2 million.
Charlotte, North Carolina is a really big city and it's growing every day.
It's a great town. It has a growing financial sector, which is really driving a lot of people to the area.
Although like any city, parts of Charlotte still struggle.
Some of the city's challenges are definitely crime, and education is another one of those real serious issues.
The city's growth had also made safe, affordable housing very hard to find.
It's 9:30 that night when Brittany Mayfield returns to the apartment where she lives with her daughter and sister.
The apartment was in a new complex built by the local housing authority.
The neighborhood, for the most part, was a quiet, family-oriented neighborhood.
Lexi is Brittany's little sister, 23-year-old Alexia Mayfield.
Alexia had recently moved into the apartment with her sister. While sister went to work, she would watch the child.
I called maybe an hour before I got off. She didn't answer the phone, so I thought maybe, of course, she probably asleep.
Inside, Brittany finds her daughter in the living room.
Brittany's baby was peacefully asleep.
Lexi?
Then, careful not to wake the baby, Brittany heads back to her sister's bedroom.
Lexi.
She found her sister on the floor.
She see blood coming from Lexi's mouth. She tapped her. She wasn't moving, but her body wasn't cold, it was warm.
In a panic, Brittany calls 911 in hopes they can save her sister. But will it be too late? Outgoing 23-year-old Alexia Mayfield was always the center of attention.
People gravitated toward her. I was a quiet one. Lexi was the outgoing one, always loud, laughing, goofy.
Alexia was the life of the party. You never had a dull moment being around her. She's very bright, smart, funny.
She was very fearless. She spoke her mind. Even though I'm the oldest, Lexi was more like the backbone, really.
After graduating high school in 2010, Alexia enrolled in an online college with the goal of becoming a pharmacy technician.
That's what she wanted to hone in on. And so we would go to the different places like CVS and see what their availabilities were. And she talked about it all the time. She was real excited.
Alexia was very ambitious and driven.
She wanted to make something of herself. That was her main goal. School was her #1 priority.
She was just a smart young lady. She loved learning.
With Lexi, the sky was the limit.
But no matter how high she soared, Lexi stayed close to her sister, Brittany. In 2014, the sisters moved in together, renting an apartment near the Charlotte airport.
Brittany was about to have a baby, and Alexia was looking forward to being a new aunt.
Lexi loved her niece very much, and her niece loved her.
However, a budding career and a new address weren't the only changes on the horizon for Lexi.
Hey, beautiful.
You talking to me?
What's up?
She told me that she was just walking down the street close to where she and her sister lived at the time. He pulled up beside her.
He was 25-year-old Emmanuel Felton.
There was definitely a spark there. They had a great conversation, and you could see that it was going to lead to something else.
She came back saying, I met this dude. So the relationship started from that point. He seemed to really love her, and she loved him, and she made that so clear. She made it so clear how she felt about Emmanuel.
She said, I have somebody that loves me just as much as I love him.
Before long, the couple was starting to think about taking the next step.
Emmanuel called me one afternoon, and he laid out this plan of how he was going to ask Alexia to marry him. Talked about the ring, the whole 9 yards.
But the big proposal never happened.
She just kept saying things just not sitting right. She felt like this wasn't the right relationship.
Alexia decided to break things off with the intentions that they could remain friends. Emmanuel agreed.
After the breakup, Alexia threw herself back into her studies, with no intention of dating again so soon. But fate had other plans.
Alexia had a friend named Jaden that she had known years before she even met Emmanuel.
Around the time things had fizzled with Emmanuel, Alexia and Jaden Young had reconnected.
He was smart, he was funny, he was the kind of guy that everybody enjoyed being around.
He was like Alexia in that he never met a stranger. And they seemed to have a lot of fun together.
And with Alexia almost finished with school, some hoped there might still be a big engagement in her future.
He left a great impression on everyone.
I was really taken by him. I loved him as though he were the son that I never had.
But now Alexia's future hangs in the balance.
Her sister has just found her unconscious and unresponsive inside of her apartment.
911.
She's not getting up, she's not moving.
She was covered in blood.
I remember Brittany telling me that she thought maybe she had fell and hit her head.
But when EMTs arrive on the scene, there's nothing they can do for Alexia.
Alexia was pronounced deceased at that time.
And it's quickly clear that her death is no accident.
First responders make a shocking discovery. Alexia has been shot.
She had sustained at least 2 gunshot wounds.
She had been murdered.
No.
"23-year-old Alexia Mayfield was on the verge of great things.
Alexia was looking forward to graduating with her pharmacy technician certification.
She also had a promising new relationship with a guy named Jaden Young.
The future appeared bright for Alexia.
But now, after Alexia's sister found her collapsed on the floor inside their apartment, EMTs have just pronounced her dead from at least 2 gunshot wounds.
Her body was found face down, so her sister could not tell that there were bullet wounds initially.
Never did she assume when she first came in the house, like, oh, my sister's dead.
When detectives arrive on the scene, they immediately begin to process the evidence.
We located 2 .380 caliber shell casings in the bedroom beside the victim.
There was no weapon at the scene, so that led the police to rule out suicide.
But why had this young woman ended up dead? Given the area, detectives first consider the possibility that this was a random crime.
While the city is growing, and that's great for the economy, an increase in population can also lead to an increase in the crime rate.
Crime is definitely on the rise. Violent crime is on the rise.
And Alexia's neighborhood was no exception.
This could have been a robbery gone wrong.
However, a look around the scene quickly rules out that theory.
There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing was missing.
They found a tablet and a set of keys in Alexia's bedroom, so it didn't look like the killer had tried to take anything.
Instead, evidence at the crime scene suggests that whoever killed Alexia wasn't an intruder.
Detectives found a pizza box on the kitchen table, along with 2 half-empty glasses.
There was an empty bottle of bourbon,
which let the police officers know that there was someone else who had been in the apartment that evening, someone who Alexia knew.
Hoping that she might know who that someone was, detectives turned to Alexia's sister, Brittany.
Brittany was waiting outside while EMTs checked out her daughter. Even though she appeared to be unharmed, they wanted to be sure before releasing her.
We know this is hard, but we really need your help if we're going to be able to find out who did this.
I'll try.
Brittany lost not only just her sister, but also her best friend.
Detectives begin by asking Brittany when she had last spoken to her sister.
I spoke to Alexia a couple times earlier when I was at work.
We talked periodically throughout the day. I would call and check up on her and my baby, see what they were doing.
Hey, what's up, girl? Hey, Lexi. Did she eat yet?
Yeah, she had a good dinner. She's in the packing plate now, getting sleepy. Lexi sound normal, sound happy.
But Brittany says that around 8 o'clock, Alexia stopped responding.
The phone just keep going straight to voicemail. She kept saying, that's not like her because she got my baby. I don't know what's going on, but I'm kind of worried. And then she was like, maybe I'm just worried for nothing.
I thought maybe she was just asleep.
When she first went in the house, she was like, girl, wake up.
But Alexia wasn't asleep.
No.
That's when she came to reality, like something else has happened.
Now it's up to detectives to determine exactly what that was.
We know this is very hard for you, ma'am. Is it a possibility that your sister may have gotten mixed up with some kind of trouble?
No, she was never in the streets or anything like that.
It wasn't like it was her past or her situation caught up with her.
Brittany also doesn't know for certain who could have come over that night.
Alexia didn't tell her she was expecting company.
However, Brittany does give detectives one possibility.
Alexia had recently started dating a gentleman named Jaden.
Were there any kind of problems between them that you're aware of?
No, sir.
He was very gentle with Alexia. He showed her nothing but respect.
Are there any ex-boyfriends we may need to talk to?
Well, there's Emmanuel.
Brittany gave us some backstory of that relationship, that the victim had recently broken up with Emmanuel.
Was there any bad blood between them?
I don't think so. I mean, they still hung out from time to time.
Emmanuel seemed to be okay with the breakup, and they seemed to be on good terms.
As far as the relationship being rocky, I didn't feel like that's what it was at all.
Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Brittany's statement doesn't give detectives much to go on, and neither does a canvass of the neighbors in Brittany's building.
We talked to a couple neighbors who earlier in the evening had heard a disturbance of some type coming from the apartment. They weren't sure what it was, but they did not call police.
But just when it looks like they're at a dead end, one of the building's security guards approaches detectives with what appears to be an important tip.
That security officer approached and gave us a name.
He says that the detective should check out a guy named Mark Briggs.
He said that name came from another resident that did not want to be identified.
They wanted to remain anonymous, so they didn't want to talk to the officers directly.
And according to the security guard, the neighbor had a good reason to remain anonymous.
Apparently, Mark Briggs was a dangerous criminal.
A security guard at the crime scene has just come forward and given detectives the name of a possible suspect in Alexia Mayfield's murder. A man named Mark Briggs.
The guard said that he had gotten the name from a resident of the apartment complex who had wanted to remain anonymous.
They didn't want to give us any information, didn't want to talk to us, but had provided that name to the security officer.
According to the informant, Mark Briggs was another resident of the complex who apparently had a thing for Alexia.
The informant had also suggested that Mark was dangerous.
When detectives head back to the station and run Mark's name through their database, it appears that there may be something to the tip.
It turned out that he had a fairly extensive criminal record.
Most are petty theft and drug charges, but others raise red flags for detectives.
Mark has several domestic battery charges on his record.
There's also firearm violations.
When detectives bring Mark into the station first thing the next morning, he appears distraught about Alexia's death.
We assume that you're aware that Alexia Mayfield was murdered last night.
Everybody's talking about it. Can't believe that she's really gone.
Yeah, we heard you had a thing for her.
I guess you'll call it that.
He admits that they had become friends and that he wanted something a little bit more than friendship with her.
She was so pretty. She was always so nice.
But you guys never...
Nah.
Did you ask her out after she broke up with Emmanuel?
Yeah. She was seeing some other guy.
He realized that Alexia just wasn't into him like that. He backed off, and they remained friends.
But detectives wonder, how did Mark take getting turned down a second time?
So did that make you feel some type of way, seeing her with someone else?
I'm sorry.
Mark says he was okay being friends.
Although detectives wonder if they were still friends, maybe it was Mark who'd spent the evening with Alexia shortly before her murder.
Maybe he'd tried to make a move, and things got out of hand.
When's the last time you saw Alexia?
Yesterday.
He said they had met up earlier that afternoon for coffee just to catch up.
At any point yesterday were you in her apartment?
No. Do y'all think I had something to do with this? Listen, if y'all really want to know what happened to Alexia, I need to go question a new guy, Jaden.
Why is that?
He says that Alexia had been complaining about her relationship, that Jaden had become more controlling and more jealous.
Jealous enough that he'd followed her?
Maybe he was angry about Alexia hanging out with Mark and had confronted her about it.
Or was it possible Mark was making the whole thing up?
He could just be trying to throw them off of his tracks.
However, when police ask Mark where he was the previous night, he has an alibi ready.
Mark says that he went out to dinner with some friends, and later on they went to a club.
Detectives will need to follow up on Mark's alibi. But first, they contact Alexia's new boyfriend, Jaden Young.
They figure it's about time to bring Jaden in for questioning, too.
Since he was involved with Alexia at the time, they needed to rule him out.
So when did you find out that Alexia had been killed?
Last night. Her mother called me and I came straight over.
When Alexia was shot and killed, I was over to the apartment and Jaden walked in. Jaden walked in and he felt it. He felt his knees. And he said, "Mama, I'm so sorry." He said, "Mama, I'm so sorry." His sentiment and his sincerity brought me so much comfort.
But was it guilt or grief that evoked such a strong response to Alexia's death?
Do you know a guy named Mark Briggs?
Yeah, he lives over there near Alexia.
You know, she met her for coffee yesterday afternoon, right?
Yeah, she might have mentioned it.
He never really sweated it because her and Mark were just friends.
He also claimed that things weren't all that serious between him and Lexi.
He said they had talked about stepping it up eventually once Alexia got out of school, but they just weren't really there yet.
Alexia was a die-hard student. She wanted to get her education.
You own a gun, Jaden?
No, sir.
Where were you at last night?
I was working. At least until Lexi's mother called me.
He said he was air service.
When detectives follow up with the rideshare service, their records confirm Jaden's alibi.
It appears that he was busy downtown and on the opposite side of Charlotte all evening.
But while Jaden's alibi checks out, when detectives speak to Mark's friends, what they learn puts him back on the suspect list.
It seems that he met up with his friends for dinner around 6:30. They left the restaurant around 8:30, and they didn't meet back up at the club until about 10:30. So that gives about an hour-and-a-half window where Mark could have committed the crime.
He was definitely a person of interest.
After his alibi falls apart, detectives consider Alexia Mayfield's friend and neighbor, Mark Briggs, a possible suspect in her murder.
Not only did he have a violent history, he admitted that he had feelings for Alexia.
Maybe Mark had been pressing for something more, and maybe he got angry when Alexia rejected him.
Since detectives couldn't account for his location for more than an hour around the time of the murder, he definitely could have had the opportunity to kill her.
But after detectives dig deeper, Mark's window of opportunity appears to close.
When detectives subpoena Mark's phone records for that evening to see whether he was in the vicinity of Alexia's apartment, it shows that he was pretty much in downtown Charlotte the entire night of the murder.
There was no indication that he had called or texted Alexia at any point that evening asking to come over.
It's not enough to rule him out completely, but it does suggest that he wasn't Alexia's killer.
However, a review of Alexia's phone records does reveal that she had been in contact with someone else prior to her death.
It seems as though she received several text messages in the hours leading up to the murder.
Detectives trace the number back to Alexia's former boyfriend, Emmanuel Felton.
He was going to be bringing some items over, returning them to her. One of those items being a tablet-style computer, also some keys. Those items were found in the apartment.
That's not the only indication that Emmanuel had come by either.
There was a text message that said that he was here, and we took that to mean that he was at the apartment.
When detectives run a background check on Emmanuel, there's no history of domestic violence.
They don't find anything other than a couple of minor possession charges.
However, they do find something that raises a red flag.
He had, in 2013, applied for a concealed handgun permit.
His application was denied, but the reason it was denied really raised some concerns.
He indicated that he had sought or received mental health treatment, but he would not sign a HIPAA release in order to obtain mental health records.
Detectives needed to find out what kind of mental health issues Emmanuel had been dealing with, and if they played any role in Alexia's death.
Detectives are wondering if he managed to get his hands on a gun despite his denial for a gun permit.
The next question is, why would Emmanuel have wanted to harm Alexia? Detectives learn more about the couple's relationship when they speak to her close friend, Constance Williams.
We was more like sisters. She would confide in me.
Yes.
Constance tells detectives that Alexia had seemed happy with Emmanuel at first.
Lexi did love him. She introduced him to the family.
However, Constance also says that as the relationship progressed, friends and family saw less and less of Lexi.
She wasn't coming around as much. She would start taking the back seat more, like, oh girl, I can't. Oh, maybe next time. This wasn't the Lexi that I know. So I kept saying and asking her, like, Lexi, are you okay?
Constance says Lexi had eventually confessed that things with Emmanuel weren't going well.
Alexia shared that Emmanuel was very controlling and jealous, and he did not want her hanging out with any of her old friends.
She would confide in me like, girl, I'm just aggravated. I'm frustrated with this relationship.
But she also had a hard time walking away.
Alexia really loved Emmanuel.
Lexi kept saying she wanted to get out this relationship. Then next thing you know, she'd be like, oh, well, we're back on good terms. We're back together. Everything is okay.
However, the relationship continued to spiral out of control.
Emmanuel's behavior became increasingly irrational.
He would become agitated, kind of irrational.
Emmanuel even accused her of cheating on him, which Alexia vehemently denied.
She felt like something was wrong with him. She just couldn't put her hands on it. She just kept saying he was kind of crazy.
According to Constance, Alexia never uncovered anything about Emmanuel's apparent struggles with mental illness, but she did learn something disturbing.
Alexia found out that Emmanuel had started using drugs.
She was like, when he's not on it, he's so nice, he's so sweet, but when he is on it, it was more of the bad than the good.
His substance abuse definitely contributed to his erratic behaviors and controlling ways.
Worst of all, Constance says that Emmanuel's drug use made him violent.
She confided in me that he was being abusive. And I know of 3 instances where he has physically abused her.
But after a year of dating, Alexia finally had enough.
Alexia really couldn't take the emotional roller coaster anymore.
She was like, I'm finally leaving him, girl.
Constance says that Emmanuel appeared to take the breakup surprisingly well.
Basically, Emmanuel was on his best behavior, just like he was any time she had threatened to leave him in the past.
She was like, even though they were splitting, they were still gonna be on good terms. And I just think things is looking up for the better.
Especially once Alexia reconnected with Jaden.
Lexi did not stay put. She didn't just sit there. She didn't just wait for him to come back around again. She would go and do her own thing.
And now detectives suspect that Lexi moving on was Emmanuel's motive for murder.
It was just basically jealousy.
He chose to do the unthinkable.
It was just, if I can't have you, nobody else can.
We're not together!
Detectives trying to solve Alexia Mayfield's murder have reason to suspect the killer is her ex-boyfriend, 25-year-old Emmanuel Felton.
It's obvious from the phone records and text messages that he had been in communication with Alexia that evening and possibly was at the apartment.
One of Alexia's friends had also reached out to detectives with information about Emmanuel's past abuse.
I've seen hands-on physical abuse, emotional abuse. She kept telling me, girl, he's getting so controlling too. It's beyond bearable.
During the breakup, he had come to the apartment, he had returned the items, and something had happened after that point. He was the sole suspect.
But now that detectives have a prime suspect, they have to find him.
We began collecting information on Emmanuel Felton, finding out where he lives, his background information, where he might be.
Next, detectives subpoena Emmanuel's cell phone records, which reveal his whereabouts on the night of the murder.
We obtained his cell phone records showing that he was at the scene when the incident happened.
Detectives have less luck tracking down Emmanuel's current location.
It looked like he might have turned his phone off after the murder because they weren't able to track him anymore.
It took him a little while to find Emmanuel. It took him a while.
In the end, it's a relative that gives up Emmanuel's location.
We get a phone call to 911 from a gentleman who says his cousin has come to his apartment. He's very upset, and he thinks that he's wanted for a homicide that had occurred.
The man said that he was Emmanuel Felton's cousin.
Within minutes, police arrive at the cousin's address.
Given that Emmanuel was possibly armed and apparently in a fragile mental state, it wouldn't have been hard for things to go wrong.
Police are aware that sometimes suspects set themselves up for a suicide by cop situation. So law enforcement was concerned that that might be what was happening here.
But when they find Emmanuel huddled on the floor, it's obvious he's not looking for a fight.
He's sitting on the apartment floor, back against the wall, knees up, kind of head down in his hands. He's very upset, kind of spaced out.
Hey, Emmanuel.
I just sit down, start having a conversation with him, and ultimately he says he will come to the law enforcement center and let us conduct an interview.
Emmanuel gave up without any resistance. He went along peacefully.
Emmanuel remains cooperative once down at the station and inside the interview room.
Part of the interview was just kind of getting a rapport with him, getting him talking. We talked about a lot of things, his history, where he's from, things he wanted to do with his life, and then began to talk to him more about having issues with the victim, Alexia.
Hey, I love that girl. She was never faithful.
He was obsessed with the fact that she was cheating on him. There's no evidence to say that, but in his mind, he thought she was cheating on him. And he would confront her about that, and she would say, "Oh, you're crazy, I'm not doing anything." His big thing was he didn't like being called crazy. And that would essentially set him off.
Despite that, Emmanuel claims that on the night of the murder, he'd gone over to the apartment, hoping to patch things up with Alexia once more.
He wanted to bring the personal items that he kept after they broke up. He said he also brought her several gifts to apologize for how he had been behaving.
I'm sorry I got so angry.
I appreciate that.
They were having a good time, eating some pizza and drinking a little bourbon.
But at some point, things took a deadly turn.
Most likely, Emmanuel suggested they get back together, or he might have even tried to make a move on Alexia.
No, Emmanuel, no.
The conversation became heated. He became angry.
I felt like he knew that this time it was over.
So what happened? I don't know.
His whole story was that he blacked out. He doesn't remember.
Are you serious? No, we're not together. What are you talking about?
According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, more than 51 million Americans struggled with mental health problems in 2019. While only 4% of violent crimes in the U.S. can be attributed to people with mental illness, 37% of incarcerated adults have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. Emmanuel Felton has surrendered to detectives investigating the murder of his ex, 23-year-old Alexia Mayfield.
Officers begin to question him, and Emmanuel admits that he went over to Alexia's apartment that night.
He was, quote unquote, dropping her clothes off. That's how he got access to the apartment.
However, Emmanuel claims not to know how Alexia died.
His whole thing was that he didn't remember what happened. He had blacked out. He wasn't sure he had done anything to anyone, that he had hurt anyone.
You don't remember shooting Alexia?
I was messed up.
He was saying he didn't remember because he was hazed because of drugs.
Emmanuel tells police that he had been on a 7-day drug binge prior to the murder.
You shot her, Emmanuel, twice.
She's dead because of you.
Oh, God.
He breaks down crying, saying that he never meant to hurt her. It's just that the drugs made him go crazy.
He ultimately admitted that he remembered firing one shot that struck Alexia and then left the apartment. He said he woke up in a haze driving his car. He had a gun on him and he threw it out the window.
Emmanuel's confession is more than enough for detectives to file charges, even if they don't believe much of it.
I believe he entirely knew what he was doing and what had happened. At the conclusion interview, he was charged with first-degree murder.
When friends and family learn of Emmanuel's arrest, they agree with the detective's suspicion that Emmanuel's blackout story is a lie.
There's no doubt in my mind. Emmanuel Felton came to the house that night with the intentions on killing her, because he normally doesn't carry a gun on him. He got the gun from somebody. He was like, if I can't have you, can't nobody else have you.
Many women who try to flee and leave in volatile and violent situations of domestic violence end up dying. The statistics are astounding. It's an astronomical amount of people.
Still, family and friends are glad Alexia's killer is in custody.
It was relief. We were grateful. We were happy, but we were still sad at the same time. Just because he's arrested, that doesn't bring Lexi back.
I was relieved, but I really wanted to go and talk to him so that I could understand how this man who said he loved my daughter so much could do something so dastardly, something so cowardly. How could he have done such a thing?
The only thing that I still want to know is why. Why?
But in the end, Alexia's family will never get the answers they deserve.
With his trial approaching, Emmanuel's attorneys approached prosecutors about a possible plea deal.
Emmanuel's attorney pushes the drug binge theory to argue for a more lenient sentence.
He was on a 7-day binge from what they said, but I really think he said that to make his story sound more sympathetic.
Before the trial is set to begin, the defense and prosecutors make a deal.
He ultimately took a plea deal and pled to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 16 years in prison.
And I thought 16 years, why? And the lawyer had explained because Emmanuel was dealing from a diminished capacity because he'd spent so much time doing drugs. If he had gone to court, if there was a trial, there would have been a possibility that he could get less time. And of course, nobody wanted that.
Not that everyone finds the outcome satisfying.
16 years is not long enough.
16 years for the cold-blooded murder of a young lady who had nothing but a bright future ahead of her, to me, does not seem fair. I would have argued for a much longer sentence, a much stricter, harsher sentence.
Emmanuel all but got away with murder.
And he will eventually get a second chance at life that Alexia never will.
Emmanuel Felton get to hear his family every day, get to talk to his family, get to see his family. We don't get that from Lexi.
I will never see my daughter on this side.
We would never get to hear Lexi's voice in person. We would never get to see Lexi face to face. That was robbed from us.
But Alexia's mother has made it her mission to ensure that her daughter didn't die in vain.
I've helped different people coordinate domestic violence conferences, and I'm in the process of doing that now. And if I were to share one thing concerning domestic violence, concerning volatile relationships, it would simply be to say, it's okay to love somebody, but never love anybody more than you love yourself. Never do that.
Abuse is never okay. If you or someone you love is in an abusive relationship, there is help available. Call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE.
Mr. X into the narrative. He claimed he had not seen Clark since then. Regarding the stolen money, Jeremy downplayed it, saying it was only $80 and no big deal. He acted as though there was no problem between him and Clark. Detective Elkins was back at square one. There was a concern that Clark might have died on the property due to the extreme cold and hypothermia. A search party was organized, including a rescue dog organization. The dogs, with their remarkable sense of smell, searched the 200 acres. They found no blood, no clothing, and no Clark. A missing person bulletin was issued. Posters were put up all over town. As weeks passed, the reality sank in for Clark's family. Something was terribly wrong. Missing persons are usually found quickly. If they are not, it is often because they cannot come home. The breakthrough came 2 counties away. 2 environmental scientists, conducting water samples in a river, noticed something half submerged in the mud and silt. It was the body of a Caucasian male. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone of the Cowlitz County Sheriff's Office responded. They noticed a silver and turquoise ring on the hand. Gladstone called Detective Elkins. The body was dirty with mud and missing socks and shoes. During the autopsy, after the silt was removed, the cause of death became clear. It was not hypothermia or an accident. There were 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. This was a homicide. A bullet was retrieved from the body, identified as a .45 caliber round. This was a significant piece of evidence. If a suspect was developed, they would be looking for a .45 caliber weapon. The investigation returned to the ranch. Clark's death was a tragedy for his family, especially his daughter, who had hoped to reconnect with him. He had been through ups and downs with drugs and alcohol, but was trying to get his life back on a healthy path. He was excited to see his grandchildren on New Year's Day. He never would have missed that chance. Jeremy Leininger became the primary person of interest. He lived with his parents, Joel and Karen, in close proximity to where the body was discovered. Detectives obtained a search warrant for Jeremy's residence. When they arrived, Karen was shocked to hear Clark was dead. She had been told by her husband, Joel, that Clark had moved to California. Detective Gladstone found this suspicious. Why would Joel tell his wife such a lie? During the search, Joel arrived and went absolutely out of his mind. He ordered the police out of his home, screaming that they had no right to be there. He struggled with deputies, and it took 5 men to control him and put him in a police car. Inside the house, detectives found an empty holster with a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition. The ammunition was consistent with the round found in Clark's body. Karen identified the bedroom as Joel's, not Jeremy's. This raised a flag. Was Joel the killer? Joel claimed he had reported the gun stolen months earlier, in September of 2016. He was arrested for obstruction of justice and resisting arrest, but was later released on bail. The evidence was still circumstantial. Detective Elkins decided to re-interview Randy. This time, Elkins had more facts. Tyler had mentioned that you could probably bury a body on the ranch and nobody would ever know. When Elkins talked to Tyler Frazier, Tyler denied involvement and claimed the conversation was between Randy and Jeremy. He said they were even comparing locations on a map where something could be buried. It became clear that Randy had lied because he was afraid of losing his job or facing retaliation from the owners. Randy eventually came to the detective's office to get something off his chest. He admitted that Jeremy flat out hated Clark. Jeremy viewed Clark as a lazy freeloader who was taking advantage of his uncle. Jeremy was wild with anger over the missing money and had convinced himself that Clark deserved to die. When the detectives tried to talk to Jeremy again, he requested a lawyer. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place through technology and more witnesses. 2 tenants on the property came forward, claiming Jeremy had confessed to them. Detective Elkins obtained a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. The records showed that Jeremy's phone moved from the ranch to the site where the body was dumped. The pings also showed that Jeremy had stopped at the house of a friend named John Perry for 20 minutes. The 2 phones then traveled together to the river. John Perry was the co-conspirator the detectives needed. Elkins located him in Longview, Washington. Perry was arrested and booked on $250,000 bail. Facing significant time, Perry decided to tell the truth. He explained that Jeremy was fed up and had planned a death trap. Jeremy had stolen his father's .45 caliber handgun. He lured Clark to a remote area of the ranch under the guise of fixing a fence and smoking weed. John Perry was in the back seat of the truck. Jeremy confronted Clark about the money, then fired 4 gunshots. Clark fell, lifeless. Jeremy had a crazy look on his face. He used a rope and a tarp to drag the body through the woods. He used a backhoe to lift the body into the back of his truck. He and John Perry then drove to the Cowiman River and dumped the body over the side. Jeremy believed he would never be caught. He even claimed to have melted the gun down. However, the testimony of John Perry, the cell phone records, and the circumstantial evidence were enough. Jeremy Leininger was arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 12 months. For Clark's family, the pain remains, but there is peace in knowing the truth. His daughter remains grateful for Detective Elkins, who became the voice for a man who could no longer speak for himself. As the poem says, "The detective goes where others fear to go, and sees what others do not wish to see, all in the pursuit of justice." The shadow of the mountain no longer hides the truth. The light of justice has finally dawned. The majestic silhouette of Mount Rainier stands as a silent sentinel over the state of Washington, its snow-capped peaks radiating a deceptive sense of eternal peace. In this cradle of natural wonder, where the air is crisp and the evergreen forests seem to hold the secrets of centuries, one would find it difficult to believe that the darkness of the human heart could ever cast a shadow. Yet, as any seasoned investigator of the human condition will tell you, evil does not require a desolate backdrop to flourish. It often hides in plain sight, beneath the mundane routines of rural life, waiting for a spark of misplaced instinct to ignite. This is the Chronicle of Reference case number 166893, a narrative that begins with a missing man and ends with the cold, hard realization that some individuals are capable of the unthinkable with little to no provocation. My name is Ben Elkins, and for over 28 years, I served as a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff's Office in Olympia, Washington. Throughout my career, I have looked into the abyss more times than I care to count. Most people go through their entire lives without ever encountering the face of true malice. But for those of us in law enforcement, it is a daily challenge to bridge the gap between society's order and the chaos of those who choose to break it. I have always been drawn to the challenge of the unsolvable, the intricate puzzle of a murder case where the victim can no longer speak and the detective must become their voice. It takes a rare breath to stay focused when the trail goes cold, but finding justice for the dead is the ultimate mandate of an American detective. The mystery began in late December, during a time when families were gathering for the holidays and the winter chill was settling deep into the soil. A woman named Tina Inman, who lived on a sprawling ranch at the base of the mountain, contacted the Thurston County Sheriff's Department with a heavy heart. Her boyfriend, Clark Calhoun, had been missing for 3 days. Clark was 53 years old, a man who had seen his share of hard times, but had found a sense of purpose and stability working as a handyman on this vast property. The ranch was a massive stretch of land, nearly 200 acres, split between 2 brothers in a partnership. One brother lived on the main portion, while the other, Joel, owned a smaller section. Clark lived in a trailer on the property, a perk provided by the owners who were longtime friends of his. He was the kind of man who could repair anything that was broken, a vital asset on a farm where fences, machinery, and structures were constantly at the mercy of the elements. His daughter would later describe him as a kind, gentle soul, a teddy bear of a man who was trying to reconnect with his family after years of estrangement caused by personal struggles. He was finally getting his life back on track, making plans to see his children and grandchildren on New Year's Day. He was excited, hopeful, and deeply invested in his new beginning. When I first arrived at the ranch to interview Tina, I was looking for indicators. In the world of criminal psychology, we look for red flags in behavior, inconsistencies in stories, or signs of hidden guilt. Tina, however, showed none of these. She was genuinely distraught. She explained that on the evening of the 28th of December, she, Clark, and their friend Randy were preparing to go into town for some shopping. As they were about to leave, Jeremy Leninger, the son of one of the ranch owners, approached them on a tractor. He asked Clark to stay behind to help with some fencing work. Clark, being the reliable worker he was, agreed to help, while Tina and Randy went on without him. When Tina returned late that night, Clark was nowhere to be found. By the morning of the third day, her concern had turned into a terrifying certainty that something was wrong. Clark had left his wallet behind. He had no cell phone of his own, usually relying on Tina's. The only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring he frequently wore. As an investigator, my internal alarm began to chime. People do not just vanish from a property they know like the back of their hand, especially when they have every reason to stay. During our conversation, Tina mentioned a detail that seemed small but carried significant weight. A few days prior, Jeremy Leninger had complained that $80 or perhaps $150 was missing from his truck. He was convinced that Clark had stolen it. Tina was adamant that Clark had no extra money and would never have taken it, but the accusation had already poisoned the air. This was our first glimpse into the psychology of the suspect. A young man harboring a grudge over a relatively insignificant amount of money allowed to fester into a toxic resentment. To verify Tina's account, I sought out Randy, the friend who had been present that evening. Randy confirmed the events of the 28th, stating that Jeremy had indeed intercepted them and asked Clark for help. His statement was consistent with Tina's, yet when I asked about any conflicts, Randy was strangely dismissive. He claimed everyone got along fine and seemed surprised by the mention of the stolen money. This discrepancy was the first crack in the facade of the ranch's peaceful exterior. Next, I turned my attention to Jeremy Leninger. In a field interview, it is always a tactical advantage to put the subject on your turf. I invited him into my vehicle, my mobile office, to discuss the events. Jeremy was cooperative and friendly, perhaps too much so. He introduced a new character into the narrative, a mysterious Mr. X. He claimed that while they were working on the fence, Clark mentioned he had to meet a friend at the front gate and walked away. This was a classic diversionary tactic often seen in criminal behavior, the introduction of an unknown, unverifiable third party to shift the focus away from the last person seen with the victim. Jeremy downplayed the issue of the missing money, claiming it was no big deal. He left the interview with my business card and an air of nonchalant helpfulness. However, my suspicions were only growing. If Clark had passed away due to natural causes or the elements, his body should have been on the property. We organized a massive search, utilizing rescue dogs with olfactory senses 600 times greater than a human's. We scoured every inch of those 200 acres, but we found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no scent. Clark Calhoun had simply evaporated. Weeks passed, and the case transitioned from a missing person search to a grim waiting game. Then, two environmental scientists conducting water samples in the Cowiman River, 2 counties away in Cowlitz County, spotted something caught in the silt and mud. It was the body of a Caucasian male. When Detective Lorenzo Gladstone of the Cowlitz County Sheriff's Office arrived, he saw the silver and turquoise ring on the man's hand. He knew immediately that he had found our missing man. The autopsy revealed a violent truth. This was not a death by hypothermia or accident. Clark Calhoun had been shot twice with a large caliber weapon. One of the rounds recovered was a .45 caliber bullet. The investigation had now officially shifted into a homicide inquiry. The challenge for us was to determine how a man from a ranch in Thurston County ended up in a river 2 counties away. It suggested a level of premeditation and a desperate attempt to dispose of evidence. People often think a river will carry a body to another country, but nature has a way of holding on to the truth. We returned to the ranch with a new perspective and a search warrant. Jeremy Leninger became our primary person of interest. He lived with his parents, Joel and Karen Leninger. When we arrived to execute the warrant, Karen seemed genuinely shocked to hear that Clark was dead, having been told by her husband that Clark had simply moved to California. This was a crucial piece of psychological data. Joel Leninger was already constructing a narrative to explain Clark's absence. The scene at the Leninger residence turned volatile when Joel arrived. He was ballistic, screaming about his rights and demanding that the police leave his property. It took 5 deputies to restrain and detain him. This level of aggression is often a defensive mechanism, a fight response triggered by the fear of discovery. Inside the house, we found an empty holster for a .45 caliber handgun and a magazine loaded with ammunition consistent with the bullet found in Clark's body. Interestingly, the holster was found in Joel's bedroom, even though we had initially been focusing on Jeremy. Joel claimed he had reported the gun stolen months prior, a claim that was technically true but highly suspicious given the circumstances. The investigation seemed to be circling a family secret, but we needed more than circumstantial evidence. I decided to re-interview Randy. This time, I was armed with facts. Randy finally broke. He admitted that he had lied out of fear for his job and his safety. He revealed that Jeremy Leninger didn't just dislike Clark, he hated him. Jeremy viewed Clark as a freeloader, a lazy man who was taking advantage of the family's kindness. In Jeremy's mind, the missing $80 was the final straw. He had convinced himself that Clark did not deserve to live on this planet, a chilling example of how a minor grievance can be amplified into a motive for murder by a warped psyche. Randy also shared a disturbing conversation that had taken place before Clark vanished. Jeremy and a friend named Tyler Frazier had been discussing how to bury dead cows on the property. Tyler had allegedly remarked that one could easily bury a body out there and nobody would ever know. When I spoke to Tyler, he shifted the blame back to Randy, claiming it was Randy who had brought up the idea of burying a body while they were looking at a map of the property. The finger pointing was a clear sign that the circle of silence was collapsing. The breakthrough came when 2 tenants living on Joel Leninger's property came forward. Jeremy had confessed to them. In the world of crime, secrets are heavy burdens that people often feel the need to share, a phenomenon I call diarrhea of the mouth. We now had hearsay of a confession, but we needed the digital footprint to seal the case. We obtained a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. We obtained a warrant. The data was damning. Big Brother is indeed real when you carry a tracking device in your pocket. Jeremy's phone pings showed him moving from the ranch to a friend's house, John Perry, and then directly to the site where the body was dumped in the Cowiman River. The phones of Jeremy and John Perry mirrored each other's movements throughout the night of the murder. We apprehended John Perry, who initially denied everything until he realized he was facing a significant prison sentence as a co-conspirator. He decided to tell the truth, to save himself. His testimony was the final piece of the puzzle. He described how Jeremy had lured Clark into the woods under the guise of smoking weed. In the back of the truck, the atmosphere was tense. Jeremy was agitated, pissed off, and silent. When they stopped, Jeremy ordered everyone out. He confronted Clark about the money one last time. "Not this again," Clark had said, likely tired of the baseless accusations. Then, 4 gunshots rang out. Jeremy stood over the lifeless body with a crazy look on his face. He then used a rope to tie Clark's legs and dragged him through the woods with the truck. Later, he used a backhoe to lift the body into the truck bed for the long drive to the river. Jeremy Leninger believed he could erase a human life over $80 and a perceived sense of superiority. He thought he was clever enough to outrun the law and nature itself. He was wrong. Jeremy was convicted of murder and sentenced to 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry received 12 months for his role. For Clark's family, the resolution of the case brought a painful form of peace. His daughter, though haunted by the details of his death, found solace in the fact that he could finally be laid to rest. She realized that through this tragedy, her family had grown stronger, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of evil. As a detective, cases like this remind me why we do what we do. We stand in the shoes of those who can no longer walk. We become the voice for the silenced. There is a profound humanism in the pursuit of justice, a commitment to the idea that every life has value and no crime should go unanswered. The base of Mount Rainier is beautiful once again, the air clear and the mountain towering in its majesty. The shadow has been lifted, not because the evil didn't exist, but because there were those willing to walk into the darkness to bring the truth back into the light. All these things we do for you, so that the beautiful places of this world can remain safe for those who cherish them. We stand at the base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington, one of the most beautiful places in this country, a place where the grandeur of nature suggests a divine peace. It is a landscape of towering evergreens and snow-capped peaks, a location where one would never believe they could encounter such chilling violence. This is the Chronicle of Reference Case, number 16-6893. I seek your formal consent to record your voice. Is it acceptable to do so? The answer is yes. We are looking into the story of a 20-year-old individual who is being interviewed and interrogated regarding a very dangerous killer. Let us begin from the very start. The young man thought he was simply being picked up to go meet someone and perhaps engage in a minor confrontation. But the reality was far more sinister. Humans are capable of terrible things, and they are capable of that with little or no motivation. In this case, a young man had a crazy look on his face. He decided he hated another human being. Then, he decided he was going to kill him. Suddenly, 4 gunshots echoed through the woods. Here we see a person acting entirely out of instinct. His instinct was to kill. How dangerous is that? It is about as dangerous as a human being can get. I have spent my entire career closing murder cases, but I am not the only one who answered the call for justice. It takes a rare breath to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, and to find justice for the dead. That is what it takes to be an American detective. My name is Ben Elkins. I served as a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office, located in Olympia, Washington. I had a law enforcement career that spanned over 28 years. I always appreciated being challenged by the complexities of the human mind. Most people do not have the opportunity to see the real evil in society, but as a law enforcement officer, you have the challenge to figure out who committed the act and hold them accountable for their choices. The mystery began when a woman who lived on a ranch called the Thurston County Sheriff Department to report that her boyfriend had been missing for 3 days. Detective Elkins responded to the call. The woman was Tina Inman, and her boyfriend was Clark Calhoun. Clark was 53 years old and worked as a handyman on this vast ranch. Clark had experienced some hard times in life, and his arrival at the ranch was an opportunity to get back on his feet. The owners of the ranch were friends who wanted to help him. Clark was no stranger to farm life. He was skilled at taking care of animals and repairing anything that needed fixing. He was the kind of man who could mend almost any broken object. As part of his employment, he was given a space to park his trailer on the property at no charge. The ownership of the property was a partnership between 2 brothers. One brother lived on the land and owned the majority of it, while the other brother, Joel, owned a smaller portion. It was a very large piece of property, pushing 200 acres between the 2 of them. When Detective Elkins arrived, he asked Tina when she had last seen Clark. She replied that it had been 3 days ago. Miss Inman explained that on the 28th of December, she, Mr. Calhoun, and another friend named Randy intended to go shopping in the evening. Jeremy asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark agreed and went with Jeremy to do the work. Miss Inman and Randy continued on their shopping trip. When she returned, quite late that night, Clark was not there. The next morning, he was still missing. By the morning of the 3rd day, she realized something was terribly wrong and decided to report it to the police. Detective Elkins asked if Clark carried a cell phone, but Tina said he used hers. She noted that he would never just leave, especially since he left his wallet behind. The only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring that he often wore. Elkins began to suspect that this was not a simple missing persons case, but perhaps a case of foul play. As an investigator, he looked for indicators. During his interview with Tina, he did not find any indicators that she was involved in anything suspicious. When asked if Clark had enemies, Tina said no, that everyone loved him. However, she recalled something odd. One of the owners mentioned that Jeremy had complained about missing $150 from his truck and believed Clark had taken it. Tina knew this was unlikely because if Clark had extra money, he would have shared it for groceries. Elkins gave her his card and moved to confirm her story. You cannot rely on a single source in a murder investigation. He located Randy, the friend who was in the car that evening. Randy confirmed the story of the shopping trip and Jeremy asking Clark for help. Their statements were consistent. When asked about confrontations, Randy said everyone was getting along just fine. He claimed to know nothing about the missing money. This left a lingering question. Where did the accusation of theft come from? The next person to interview was Jeremy Leninger. Since Jeremy was the last person seen with Clark, the detective's antennas were up. Elkins conducted a field interview, inviting Jeremy into his car. This is a common tactic to put a person on the detective's turf. Jeremy explained that on the 28th of December, they were stringing barbed wire when Clark suddenly said he had to meet a friend at the gate. Jeremy claimed that was the last time he saw him. Jeremy introduced a mysterious Mr. X into the narrative. When asked about the stolen money, Jeremy downplayed it, saying it was only $80 and no big deal. He appeared cooperative and friendly, but Elkins left the interview with more questions than answers. As the days passed, a search party was organized. The property was nearly 200 acres of difficult terrain. They used rescue dogs with an olfactory scent, 600 times greater than a human. Despite their efforts, they found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no sign of Clark Calhoun. A missing person bulletin was issued, and posters were put up all over town. For Clark's daughter, the posters made the tragedy a reality. Missing persons are usually found quickly. If they are not, it is often because they cannot come home. Weeks later, 2 environmental scientists taking water samples in a river 2 counties away noticed something submerged in the mud. It was the body of a Caucasian male. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone of the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office responded. They identified the man as Clark Calhoun by the silver and turquoise ring on his hand. The discovery changed everything. This was now a homicide investigation. An autopsy revealed 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. A .45 caliber round was recovered from the body. This was a significant lead. If a suspect was found, they would be looking for a .45 caliber weapon. The investigation returned to the ranch. Jeremy Leninger became a primary person of interest. He lived with his parents, Joel and Karen, in close proximity to where the body was found. The police obtained a search warrant for their residence. When the detectives arrived, Karen was shocked to hear Clark was dead. As her husband Joel had told her, Clark moved to California. This was a major red flag. Why would Joel lie about Clark's whereabouts? During the search, Joel Leninger arrived home and became extremely aggressive. He ordered the police to leave, claiming they had no right to be there. It took 5 deputies to control him and place him in a police car. A search of the residence revealed an empty holster and a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition, consistent with the round found in the victim. The bedroom where the holster was found belonged to Joel. This raised questions about whether Joel was the killer. However, Joel claimed he had reported the gun stolen months earlier in September of 2016. He was arrested only for obstruction and resisting arrest, then released on bail. The evidence was still what detectives call skinny evidence. Detective Elkins decided to re-interview Randy. This time, he was armed with more facts. Randy finally admitted that there had been a conversation about burying dead cows on the property, and another individual named Tyler Frazier had joked that one could bury a body there and no one would ever know. Elkins then spoke to Tyler, who denied involvement and suggested the conversation was actually between Randy and Jeremy. He claimed they were looking at a map of the property to find burial locations. This revealed that Randy had lied, and lying is always a sign that someone is hiding something. Eventually, Randy returned to the office. Driven by guilt, he confessed that Jeremy actually hated Clark. Jeremy viewed Clark as a lazy freeloader who was taking advantage of his family. He was obsessed with the idea that Clark had stolen his money. The investigation took a final turn when 2 tenants on the property came forward. They reported that Jeremy had confessed the murder to them. Furthermore, cell phone records provided the concrete evidence needed. Jeremy's phone pings tracked his movement from the ranch to the site where the body was dumped. The records also showed he was with a friend named John Perry. The 2 phones moved together across all the key locations. Elkins tracked down John Perry, who was eventually arrested as a co-conspirator. Facing significant prison time, Perry decided to tell the truth. John Perry's statement blew the case wide open. He explained that on the day of the murder, Jeremy had asked him for help with a problem, implying they were going to confront someone about stolen money. Perry sat in the back of the truck, while Clark sat in the passenger seat. They drove to a remote area of the ranch. Jeremy appeared, agitated and silent. He told everyone to get out. Then, without warning, 4 gunshots were fired. Clark fell to the ground, lifeless. Jeremy had a crazy look on his face. He then used a rope and a tarp to drag the body and used a backhoe to load it into his truck. They drove to the Cowiman River and dumped the body over the side. Jeremy Leninger believed he had committed the perfect crime. He even claimed to have melted down the murder weapon. But he forgot that secrets rarely stay secret. Thanks to the diligent work of Detective Elkins and his team, the circumstantial evidence, the witness statements, and the digital footprints all came together. Jeremy Leninger was arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 12 months. For Clark's family, the resolution brought a bittersweet peace. His daughter remains grateful to Detective Elkins for his personal attention to the case. Though her father had struggled, he was a kind man who was trying to reconnect with his family. The justice served held an evil individual accountable and allowed a family to find closure. Detective Elkins became the voice for a man who could no longer speak for himself. As the poem says, "He has been where others fear to be and seen things others do not wish to see." All in the pursuit of justice, the light of truth eventually shone through the darkness, proving that even in the most beautiful places, the law will always find a way to hold the darkness at bay. We stand at the majestic base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington, a place defined by its breathtaking peaks and serene landscapes. It is one of the most beautiful places in this country, a sanctuary of nature where one would never believe that violence could find a foothold. However, evil does not care for scenery. This is the official record for reference case number 16-6893. The recording begins with a simple request for consent to capture a voice, a small step in a journey that leads into the darkest corners of the human heart. Within this case, we find a 20-year-old man being interviewed and interrogated regarding a very dangerous killer. The story starts with a deceptive simplicity. A witness recalls thinking that he was just going to be picked up to go meet someone and perhaps engage in a minor confrontation. He never expected to witness the termination of a life. Humans are capable of terrible things. They are capable of committing atrocities with little or no motivation at all. In this instance, a killer possessed a look of madness on his face. He decided he hated another man. Then, he decided he was going to kill him. 4 gunshots rang out, shattering the silence of the woods. This is the reality of a person who acts purely out of instinct. When that instinct is to kill, it represents the highest level of danger imaginable. Ben Elkins, a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office, located in Olympia, Washington, spent his career closing murder cases. With over 28 years in law enforcement, Elkins was a man who thrived on challenges. He understood that while most people never see the real evil in society, a law enforcement officer must face it directly, figure out the culprit, and hold them accountable. The case began with a phone call from a woman living on a ranch. She reported that her boyfriend had been missing for 3 days. Tina Inman was the woman, and her boyfriend was Clark Calhoun. Clark was 53 years old, working as a handyman on the ranch. He was a man who had faced many hard times in life. The owners of the ranch were friends, who saw an opportunity to help him get back on his feet. Clark was no stranger to farm life. Problemento vai. Clark was no stranger to farm life, caring for animals, and repairing anything that was broken. He was a man of utility and simple needs. As part of his job, he was given a space to park his trailer on the property at no charge. The ranch itself was a massive piece of land, pushing 200 acres, owned by a partnership between two brothers. One brother lived on the main portion of the property, while the other brother, Joel, owned a smaller section. When Detective Elkins first arrived to speak with Tina, the primary question was when she had last seen Clark. Tina explained that on the 28th of December, she, Clark, and a friend named Randy were planning to go shopping in the evening. As they were leaving, Jeremy Leninger, the son of one of the owners, approached them on a tractor. He asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark agreed, leaving his shopping plans behind. Tina and Randy continued on their trip. When Tina returned late that night, Clark was nowhere to be found. By the morning of the third day, her concern turned to dread, and she called the police. Clark did not carry a cell phone. He used Tina's. He had even left his wallet behind. The only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring he often wore. Elkins, a veteran of many investigations, looked for indicators of foul play. He found no signs that Tina was involved in anything suspicious. When asked if Clark had enemies, Tina mentioned something odd. One of the owners said Jeremy had complained about missing $150 from his truck and believed Clark had taken it. However, Tina knew Clark had no extra money. To confirm the story, Elkins interviewed Randy. Randy's statement was consistent with Tina's regarding the last time they saw Clark. Randy claimed there were no issues and that everyone was getting along fine. He seemed surprised by the accusation of the stolen money. This left a lingering question. Where did this accusation come from? And why was it being circulated? The next logical person to interview was Jeremy Leninger, the last person seen with Clark. Elkins conducted a field interview, inviting Jeremy into his vehicle, which he called an office on 4 wheels. Jeremy was cooperative and friendly. He introduced a new element into the narrative, a mysterious individual he called Mr. X. Jeremy claimed Clark told him he had to meet a friend at the gate. As for the stolen money, Jeremy downplayed it, saying it was only $80 and not a big deal. Despite Jeremy's friendly demeanor, Clark remained missing. Elkins organized a search party, utilizing rescue dogs with a sense of smell 600 times greater than a human. They searched the 200-acre property for hours, but found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no sign of Clark Calhoun. A missing person bulletin was issued, and posters were put up all over town. Clark's daughter reflected on the reality of the situation, knowing that something was terribly wrong. Missing persons who are not found quickly often do not come home because they cannot. Weeks passed until 2 environmental scientists, conducting water samples 2 counties away, noticed something in a river. Half buried in the silt of the mud flow was the body of a man. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone of the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office responded to the scene. The presence of a silver and turquoise ring on the hand suggested they had found Clark Calhoun. The body was recovered and taken to the coroner's office. It was covered in mud and lacked socks or shoes. While the river had caused some scrapes and scratches, the removal of the silt revealed the true cause of death: 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. This was no longer a missing person case. It was a homicide investigation. A .45 caliber round was retrieved from the body. This was a significant piece of evidence. If a suspect could be linked to a .45 caliber weapon, the case would strengthen. The news was devastating to Clark's family. Despite his past struggles with drugs and alcohol, Clark was a caring man who was trying to reconnect with his children and grandchildren. He had been excited about seeing them on New Year's Day. The realization that he had been murdered brought a strange sense of peace to the family as they finally had answers and could lay him to rest. The investigation now pivoted back to the ranch. Jeremy Leninger became the primary person of interest. He lived with his parents, Joel and Karen, in close proximity to where the body was found. Law enforcement obtained a search warrant for the Leninger residence. When they arrived, Karen was shocked to hear that Clark had been murdered. Her husband, Joel, had told her that Clark moved to California. This was a massive red flag. During the search, Joel Leninger arrived and became extremely aggressive. He ordered the police out of his home, despite the legal search warrant. It took 5 deputies to control and detain him. His reaction suggested he had something to hide. Inside the house, detectives found an empty holster with a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition, consistent with the round found in Clark's body. The holster was found in Joel's bedroom. When questioned, Joel claimed he had not seen the gun in months, reporting it stolen in September of 2016. However, the evidence was thin, and Joel was released after posting bail for obstructing justice. The investigation was still in the dark, searching for a breakthrough. Detective Elkins decided to re-interview Randy. This time, Elkins had more facts. Randy finally admitted that before Clark went missing, he had been with Jeremy and a friend named Tyler Frazier. Tyler had reportedly joked about how easy it would be to bury a body on the property. When Elkins confronted Tyler, the young man denied involvement, claiming Randy and Jeremy were the ones having that conversation. He even mentioned they had used a map to compare locations on the property. It became clear that Randy had lied out of fear. He eventually came to Elkins' office to get the truth off his chest. Randy revealed that Jeremy hated Clark, viewing him as a lazy freeloader who took advantage of the family. Jeremy was obsessed with the idea that Clark had stolen his money. Jeremy had convinced himself that Clark did not deserve to live. As the investigation continued, 2 tenants on the property came forward. They claimed Jeremy had confessed the murder to them. While this was hearsay, it provided more direction. Elkins then obtained a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. The records showed Jeremy's phone moving between the ranch and the site where the body was dumped. The pings also showed he had stopped at the house of a friend named John Perry for 20 minutes. The 2 phones then moved together to the river. John Perry was the final piece of the puzzle. He was arrested as a co-conspirator. Facing significant prison time, Perry decided to tell the truth. He explained that Jeremy had lured Clark into the woods under the guise of fixing a fence and smoking. John thought they were just going to confront someone about the stolen money. Instead, Jeremy shot Clark 4 times. According to Perry, Jeremy had a crazy look on his face. When Perry refused to touch the body, Jeremy tied a rope to Clark's legs and dragged him through the woods with his truck. He then used a backhoe to lift the body into the truck and drove to the river to dump it. Based on John Perry's testimony and the circumstantial evidence, Jeremy Leninger was arrested and charged with murder. He was convicted and sentenced to 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and received a 12-month sentence. For Clark's family, the accountability brought closure. Detective Elkins became the voice for a man who could no longer speak for himself. As the poem says, "A detective goes where others fear to go and sees what others do not wish to see, all in the service of justice and the protection of the community. The evil was held accountable, and the beauty of the Rainier Base was restored to a place of peace." We stand today at the majestic base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. It is one of the most breathtakingly beautiful places in this country, a cathedral of nature where the air is crisp and the peaks are shrouded in eternal snow. It is a place of peace, the kind of landscape that invites reflection and wonder, one where you would never believe you could encounter the rawest forms of human violence. This narrative concerns reference case number 16-6893. Before we proceed into the heart of this darkness, I must ask for your consent to record your voice. Is it okay to do that? Yes. We begin with a 20-year-old young man who is being interviewed and interrogated about a very dangerous killer. Let us start from the very beginning of a journey that proves humans are capable of terrible things, often with little or no tangible motivation beyond a twisted sense of instinct. The human mind is a complex labyrinth. Most people spend their lives avoiding the darker corners of society. But a law enforcement officer must walk into those shadows daily. I am Ben Elkins. I served as a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office, located in Olympia, Washington. My career in law enforcement spanned over 28 years. I always liked being challenged, because most people do not have the opportunity to see the real evil in society. Yet, as an officer, you have the profound challenge to figure out who committed an atrocity and hold them accountable for their choices. The story begins with a phone call. A woman who lives on a ranch calls the Thurston County Sheriff Department to report that her boyfriend has been missing for 3 days. I responded to that call. The woman was Tina Inman, and her boyfriend was Clark Calhoun. Clark was 53 years old, a man who had seen some hard times in life, but was actively working to mend the broken pieces of his existence. He was employed as a handyman on this vast ranch. His daughter later recalled that her father came to work on this ranch because the owners were friends who saw an opportunity to help him get back on his feet. Clark was no stranger to farm life. He was a man of the earth, skilled at taking care of animals and repairing the various things that inevitably break on a working farm. He was the kind of person who could fix pretty much anything. As a perk of his employment, he was given a space to park his trailer on the property at no charge. The property itself was a brotherly partnership, a sprawling piece of land pushing 200 acres. One brother lived on it and owned the majority, while the other brother, Joel, owned a smaller portion. It was a massive stage for a tragedy to unfold. When I asked Tina when she last saw Clark, she replied that it had been 3 days ago. She explained that on the 28th of December, she, Clark, and another friend named Randy were intending to go shopping in the evening. They were about to leave when Jeremy Leninger, the son of one of the owners, approached them on a tractor. Jeremy asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark, being the reliable worker he was, agreed to stay. Tina and Randy continued on their shopping trip. When Tina returned late that night, Clark was not there. By the morning of the third day, the silence from Clark became deafening. He did not carry a cell phone, preferring to use Tina's, and he had even left his wallet behind. These are what we call indicators. As an investigator, you look for indicators of foul play or domestic issues. When I interviewed Tina, I did not pick up on any indicators that she was involved in something sinister. She seemed genuinely lost. When I asked if Clark had any enemies, she said no, that everybody loved Clark. However, she mentioned one odd detail. One of the owners had mentioned that Jeremy had complained about missing $150 from his truck and believed Clark had taken it. Tina knew this was unlikely, as Clark would have shared any extra money with her for groceries or basic needs. To build a case, you cannot rely on a single source. I located Randy, the friend who was in the car that evening. Randy confirmed the story. He stated that Jeremy came and grabbed Clark because he needed help. Both statements were consistent, but when I asked Randy about confrontations, he claimed everything was fine. He even claimed the story about the stolen money was news to him. This created a lingering question in my mind. Where did this accusation come from, and why was it floating around the ranch like a ghost? The next person to interview was Jeremy Leninger. Since he was the last person seen with Clark, my internal antennas were up. In a field interview, you want to put the subject on your turf. I invited him into my car, an office with 4 wheels. Jeremy told me that on the 28th of December, they started stringing barbed wire, but then Clark claimed he had to go meet a friend at the gate. Jeremy introduced a mysterious Mr. X into the narrative. He downplayed the missing money, saying it was only $80 and no big deal. Jeremy was cooperative and friendly, appearing as a man with nothing to hide. We were back to square one. We organized a search party involving rescue dogs with a sense of smell 600 times greater than a human. We searched 200 acres. We found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no Clark. Weeks passed. Missing persons who are not found quickly usually have a grim reason for their absence. Then, 2 environmental scientists, taking water samples in a river 2 counties away, noticed something submerged in the mud. It was the body of a Caucasian male, half buried in silt. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone from the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office took the lead there. They noticed a silver and turquoise ring on the hand of the deceased. It was Clark Calhoun. The body was dirty, with no socks or shoes. The autopsy revealed the truth. After the silt was washed away, it was obvious that this was not a natural death. Clark had 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. We recovered a .45 caliber round from his body. This was now a homicide investigation. The investigation returned to the ranch. We learned that Joel and Karen Leninger, Jeremy's parents, lived in close proximity to where the body was found. We obtained a search warrant for their residence. When we arrived, Karen was shocked. She claimed her husband, Joel, told her Clark had moved to California. Unless California is at the bottom of the Cowlitz River, that was a blatant lie. As we searched, Joel arrived and went absolutely out of his mind. He ordered the police out and struggled with deputies, requiring 5 officers to control him. This level of aggression is a psychological red flag. What was he afraid we would find? Inside, we found an empty holster with a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition, consistent with the round that killed Clark. Karen identified the bedroom as Joel's, not Jeremy's. We brought Joel in, but he claimed the gun had been missing since September. We only had skinny evidence at that point, and Joel posted bail for obstruction. We were still punching in the dark, waiting for someone to say ouch. I went back to Randy. This time, I was armed with more facts. Randy finally broke. He admitted that before Clark went missing, Jeremy and a friend named Tyler were talking about burying dead cows on the property. Then Tyler supposedly said you could bury a body out there and nobody would ever know. When I spoke to Tyler, he denied it and claimed the conversation was between Randy and Jeremy. They were even comparing locations on a map for burial sites. Randy had lied because he was afraid of losing his job or facing the wrath of the owners. Randy eventually came to my office to get something off his chest. Guilt is a useful tool for a detective. Randy revealed that Jeremy flat out hated Clark. Jeremy viewed Clark as a freeloader, a lazy man who took advantage of his uncle. Jeremy had convinced himself that Clark stole his money, and he used this manufactured rage to justify an act of ultimate evil. The case finally blew open when 2 tenants of Joel Leninger came forward. Jeremy had confessed to them. Secrets have a way of escaping through what I call diarrhea of the mouth. We then obtained cell phone records. In the modern age, your phone is a witness that never sleeps. The pings showed Jeremy's phone moving from the ranch to the site where the body was dumped. It also showed him stopping at the house of a friend named John Perry. Their phone records mirrored each other perfectly. I located John Perry. He initially denied everything, but when faced with the weight of a homicide charge, he decided he did not want to do someone else's time. He told us the entire story. Jeremy was fed up and decided to use his father's .45 caliber pistol. John Perry thought they were just going to beat someone up to get the money back. Instead, Jeremy stopped the truck, told everyone to get out, and fired 4 gunshots. John described the look on Jeremy's face as crazy. Jeremy then used a rope and a tarp to drag the body through the woods, used a backhoe to lift the body into the truck, and dumped him in the river. Jeremy believed he had committed the perfect crime. He even claimed to have melted the gun down. But he forgot one thing. Justice has a voice. Jeremy Leninger was arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and received 12 months. For Clark's family, the pain remains, but there is peace in knowing the truth. Clark was a kind, gentle man, a teddy bear who was trying to reconnect with his children. He did not deserve to be discarded in a river over a handful of dollars and a heart full of baseless hate. I am proud to have stood in Clark's shoes when he could no longer stand. I became his voice. There is a poem that says, "I have been where you fear to be. I have gone where you fear to go. I have seen things you do not wish to see. All these things I have done for you. That is the essence of justice." It is the light that eventually finds its way through the darkest mud of the river. We stand today at the majestic base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington, a location defined by its breathtaking natural splendor. It is one of the most beautiful places in this country, a sanctuary of ancient trees and glacial whispers where one would never believe they could encounter such chilling violence. This is the official record of reference case number 16-6893. Before we proceed into the dark heart of this narrative, I require your formal consent to record your voice for the integrity of this investigation. Is it okay to do that? The answer is yes. We are dealing with a 20-year-old individual who is currently being interviewed and interrogated regarding the actions of a very dangerous killer. Let us begin this journey from the very beginning. The initial thought of the witness was simple and mundane, believing the suspect was just going to come pick him up to go meet someone. Humans are capable of terrible things, and sadly, they are capable of those things with little or no motivation at all. The suspect had a crazy look on his face, the kind of expression that signals a total departure from logic. He decided he hated the victim. Levin na khale. Then, he decided he was going to kill him. Then, all of a sudden, 4 gunshots echoed through the silence. Here we have a person who acts out of pure, raw instinct. And that instinct is to kill. How dangerous is such a person? It is about as dangerous as a human being can get. I have spent my entire career closing murder cases, but I am not the only one who answered the call to find the truth. It takes a rare breadth of character to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, and to find justice for the dead. That is precisely what it takes to be an American detective. My name is Ben Elkins. I served as a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office located in Olympia, Washington. My law enforcement career spanned over 28 years. I always liked being challenged by the complexities of human nature. Most people do not have the opportunity or perhaps the burden to see the real evil in society. But as a law enforcement officer, you face the challenge of figuring out who committed a crime and holding them accountable for their actions. The case began when a woman living on a ranch called the Thurston County Sheriff Department to report that her boyfriend had been missing for 3 days. I responded to the call. This woman was Tina Inman. Her boyfriend was Clark Calhoun. He was 53 years old and employed as a handyman on this ranch. Clark had come to work on this ranch after having experienced some hard times in life. The owners of the ranch were friends, and they saw an opportunity to help him get back on his feet. Clark was no stranger to farm life, taking care of animals and repairing anything that needed fixing. He was the kind of person who could repair pretty much anything. As a perk of his employment, he was given a space to park his trailer. He lived in that trailer on the property at no charge. The ownership of the property was a brotherly partnership. Now porta, one brother lived on the land and owned the majority of it, while the other brother, named Joel, owned a smaller portion. It was a massive piece of property, pushing 200 acres between the two of them. I asked Tina when she last saw Clark. She stated it was 3 days ago. Miss Inman explained that on the 28th of December, she, Mr. Calhoun, and another friend named Randy were intending to go shopping in the evening. They were about to leave when Jeremy Leninger, the son of one of the owners, approached them on a tractor. Jeremy asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark agreed and went with Jeremy to perform the work. Miss Inman and Randy continued on their shopping trip. When she returned late that night, Clark was not there. The next morning, he was still missing. By the morning of the 3rd day, she decided to report it to the police. I asked if Clark carried a cell phone. She said no, he used hers. He had even left his wallet behind. She noted that the only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring that he often wore. As an investigator, I began to think that this might not be a simple missing person case. Perhaps someone had done away with him. I sensed that Tina was telling the truth. In investigations, we look for indicators of foul play, and I did not pick up any indicators that she was involved. I asked if Clark had any enemies. She said no, that everybody loved Clark. However, she recalled something odd. One of the owners mentioned that Jeremy had complained about missing $150 from his truck and believed Clark had taken it. Tina knew this was unlikely, as Clark would have shared any extra money for groceries or other needs. I provided Tina with my card and moved to confirm her story. You cannot rely on a single source in this business. I located Randy, the friend who was in the car that evening. He confirmed their statements were consistent regarding the last time they saw Clark. I asked Randy if there had been any confrontations. He said no, everyone was getting along just fine. When I mentioned the stolen money, Randy said that was news to him. This left a lingering question about where that accusation originated. Next, I interviewed Jeremy Leninger. I invited him into my car, my office on 4 wheels. Jeremy explained that on the 28th of December, they were stringing barbed wire when Clark suddenly said he had to meet someone at the gate. Jeremy introduced a mysterious Mr. X into the conversation. Jeremy claimed that was the last time he saw him. When asked about the stolen money, Jeremy downplayed it, saying it was only $80 and no big deal. He appeared cooperative and friendly, but I left with suspicions. We organized a search party and used rescue dogs. A dog has an olfactory sense 600 times greater than a human. Despite several hours of searching 200 acres, we found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no Clark Calhoun. We issued a missing person bulletin and put up posters. For his family, reality was sinking in. Missing persons are usually found quickly. If they are not, it is often because they cannot come home. Weeks later, 2 environmental scientists taking water samples in a river 2 counties away noticed something in the mud flow. It was the body of a Caucasian male. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone from the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office responded. They were aware of the bulletin I had issued. When they saw the silver and turquoise ring, they knew they had found our man. I attended the autopsy. Once the silt was removed, it became obvious. Clark had 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. This was now a homicide investigation. A bullet was retrieved from the body, identified as a .45 caliber round. This was a significant piece of evidence. The investigation returned to the ranch. Jeremy Leninger became a primary person of interest. He lived with his parents, Joel and Karen. Interestingly, their residence was in close proximity to where the body was discovered. We obtained a search warrant for Jeremy's address. When we arrived, Karen was shocked to hear Clark was dead. She claimed her husband, Joel, told her Clark had moved to California. This raised an immediate red flag. Why would Joel lie about Clark moving away? During the search, Joel arrived and went absolutely out of his mind, ordering the police to leave. It took 5 deputies to control him. This behavior suggested he was hiding something. Inside, we found an empty holster and a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition, consistent with the round found in Clark. We discovered this was Joel's bedroom, not Jeremy's. Joel claimed the gun had been missing since September. At that time, we only had enough evidence to arrest Joel for obstruction and resisting arrest. I decided to re-interview Randy. This time, I had more facts. Randy finally admitted that before Clark disappeared, he had been with Jeremy and a friend named Tyler. Tyler had supposedly mentioned that you could bury a body on the property and nobody would ever know. When I spoke to Tyler, he denied this and claimed the conversation was actually between Randy and Jeremy. This told me Randy had lied to me earlier because he was afraid of the owners. Randy eventually came to my office to get something off his chest. He revealed that Jeremy actually hated Clark, viewing him as a lazy freeloader. Jeremy was obsessed with the idea that Clark had stolen his money. The case truly broke open when 2 tenants of Joel Leninger came forward. They were friends of Jeremy. Detective Gladstone and I. Secrets never stay secrets for long. We then obtained a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. His phone moved from the ranch to the site where the body was dumped. The records also showed he was with a friend named John Perry. I located John Perry. He initially denied involvement, but was arrested as a co-conspirator. Facing significant time, he decided to tell the truth. He explained that Jeremy had lured Clark to a remote part of the ranch under the guise of fixing a fence. Jeremy then invited Clark to smoke weed with him and John. As they got out of the truck, Jeremy shot Clark 4 times. John described the crazy look on Jeremy's face. Jeremy then used a rope to drag the body through the woods, used a backhoe to lift it into his truck, and dumped it in the river. Jeremy believed he would get away with it, but modern technology and the weight of guilt on his associates proved him wrong. Jeremy Leninger was arrested, convicted of murder, and received a sentence of 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 months. For the family of Clark Calhoun, the pain remains, but there is peace in knowing the truth. Clark was a kind, gentle man, a teddy bear who was trying to reconnect with his children. No one deserves to die over a petty, invented grudge. This investigation serves as a reminder that justice, though sometimes slow, is relentless. As a detective, I stood in Clark's shoes when he no longer could. I became his voice. There is a poem that captures this sentiment well. It says, "I have been where you fear to be. I have gone where you fear to go. I have seen things you do not wish to see. All these things I have done for you. Namasa, Uzieste." The light of truth has finally shone upon the base of Mount Rainier, and the memory of Clark Calhoun is honored by the justice we served. We stand today at the majestic base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. It is a place of breathtaking beauty, a landscape where the peaks touch the heavens and the air carries the scent of ancient pine and fresh snow. It is one of the most beautiful places in this country, a sanctuary of peace where one would never believe that violence could find a foothold. Yet, even in the shadow of such grandeur, human darkness can emerge. This is the narrative of reference case number 16-6893. Before we proceed into the heart of this mystery, I must obtain your formal consent to record your voice. Is it okay to do that? Yes. We begin with the image of a 20-year-old young man. He is being interviewed, caught in the high-pressure environment of an interrogation room. To understand the end, we must return to the very beginning. The young man recalls his initial thought, a simple and mundane expectation. He thought a friend was just going to come pick him up, and then they were going to go meet someone. He had no idea that he was stepping into a nightmare. Humans are capable of terrible things. History and psychology teach us that they are capable of such acts with little or no motivation. In this case, the catalyst was trivial, but the result was final. There was a crazy look on the face of the antagonist. He had decided he hated a man. Then, he decided he was going to kill him. The silence of the woods was shattered by 4 gunshots. Here, we encounter a person who acts out of pure, lethal instinct. His instinct was to kill. How dangerous is that? It is about as dangerous as a human being can get. I have spent my entire career closing murder cases, but I am not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breath to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, and to find justice for the dead. That is the true weight of being an American detective. My name is Ben Elkins. I served as a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office, located in Olympia, Washington. My law enforcement career spanned over 28 years. I was a man who always liked being challenged. Most people do not have the opportunity to see the real evil that exists in society. But as a law enforcement officer, you face the challenge of figuring out who committed the act and holding them accountable for their choices. The story truly begins when a woman who lives on a ranch calls the Thurston County Sheriff Department. She is reporting that her boyfriend has been missing for 3 days. Detective Elkins is the one who responds to the call. The woman is Tina Inman. Her missing boyfriend is Clark Calhoun. Clark was 53 years old. He was a man who had faced hard times in life, but he was a man of utility and heart. He worked as a handyman on this ranch. His daughter remembers him as a man who was no stranger to farm life. A man who could take care of animals and repair anything that needed fixing. He was given a space to park his trailer on the property at no charge, a perk of his employment provided by the owners, who were friends helping him get back on his feet. The ranch was a massive piece of property, pushing 200 acres. It was a brotherly partnership, with one brother owning the majority and the other brother, Joel, owning a smaller portion. When Detective Elkins asks Tina when she last saw Clark, she replies that it was 3 days ago. Tina explains the events of the 28th of December. She, Clark, and another friend named Randy were planning to go shopping in the evening. They were just about to leave when Jeremy Leininger, the son of one of the owners, approached them on a tractor. Jeremy asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark, being the helpful man he was, agreed. He went with Jeremy, while Tina and Randy continued on their shopping trip. When Tina returned late that night, Clark was not there. By the morning of the third day, the silence became deafening. She decided to call the police. Detective Elkins asks if Clark carries a cell phone. Tina says no, he usually uses hers. He left his wallet behind. The only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring he often wore. To an investigator, these are indicators. Tina showed no signs of foul play herself. She loved Clark. When asked if Clark had enemies, she said no, but she recalled something odd. One of the owners mentioned that Jeremy had complained about $80 or perhaps $150 missing from his truck, and he believed Clark had taken it. Tina knew this was unlikely, as Clark would have shared any extra money with her for groceries. Detective Elkins knows that a single source is never enough. He finds Randy, the friend who was in the car that night. Randy confirms the story. Jeremy had come and grabbed Clark because he needed help. Both statements were consistent. Randy claimed there were no issues between them, but the question of the stolen money remained. The next step was to interview Jeremy Leininger. He was the last person seen with Clark, and the detective's antennas were up. In a field interview, Elkins prefers to put the subject on his turf. He invites Jeremy into his office on 4 wheels, a police car. Jeremy tells a story of stringing barbed wire until Clark supposedly said he had to meet someone at the gate. Jeremy introduces a mysterious Mr. X into the narrative. He claims Clark just walked away to meet a friend. Jeremy downplays the money issue, saying it was no big deal. He appears cooperative and friendly, but the detective is back at square one. Concerns grow that Clark might have died on the property due to the cold. Hypothermia is a real threat in the Washington winter. A search party is organized, spanning several hours across the 200 acres. Rescue dogs with a sense of smell 600 times greater than a human are brought in. They use Clark's clothing to catch his scent, but the search yields nothing. No blood, no clothing, no Clark. Weeks pass. A missing person bulletin is posted all over town. If they are not, it is often because they cannot come home. 2 counties away from Thurston County, 2 environmental scientists taking water samples notice something in the mud flow of a river. It is the body of a Caucasian male, half buried in silt. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone of the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office responds. He has been a detective for 6 years. His first goal is identification. He is aware of the bulletin put out by Ben Elkins. When he sees a silver and turquoise ring on the hand of the body, he knows. This was not an accident or a case of hypothermia. The silt is washed away to reveal 2 large caliber gunshot wounds. This is now a homicide investigation. The doctor retrieves a bullet from Clark's body. It is identified as a .45 caliber round. This is a significant piece of evidence. If a suspect is found, the investigators will be looking for a .45 caliber weapon. The news is devastating for Clark's family. Despite his past struggles with drugs and alcohol, Clark was a man trying to reconnect with his children and grandchildren. He was excited about New Year's Day. Taya, Nasana, he was a kind, gentle soul, a teddy bear of a man. Now, he was a victim of a senseless murder. The investigation returns to the ranch. Jeremy Leininger becomes the primary person of interest. He lives with his parents, Joel and Karen, who own property near where the body was discovered. A search warrant is obtained for Jeremy's address. When the detectives arrive, Karen is shocked to hear that Clark has been murdered. She was under the impression, told to her by her husband Joel, that Clark had moved to California. This lie immediately raises flags. Unless California is in the middle of the Cowlitz River, the story does not hold water. As the search begins, Karen calls Joel. Joel arrives on the scene and descends into a rage. He orders the police out of his home, screaming about his rights. It takes 5 deputies to control and detain him. His reaction is not that of a man with nothing to hide. Inside the home, in a room Karen identifies as Joel's bedroom, detectives find an empty holster with a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition. It is the same caliber used to kill Clark Calhoun. Joel is brought in for questioning. He claims the gun has been missing since September. While Joel is arrested for obstructing justice, there is not yet enough evidence to charge him with murder. The investigation is still in the dark. But someone has said, ouch! Detective Elkins re-interviews Randy. This time, armed with more facts, he pushes for the truth. Randy finally admits that before Clark vanished, he was with Jeremy and a friend named Tyler Frazier. Tyler had been talking about burying dead cows on the property, and then he mentioned that one could probably bury a body out there too, and nobody would ever know. This conversation happened just 2 days before Clark was murdered. When Elkins speaks to Tyler Frazier, Tyler denies involvement. He claims the conversation about burying a body was actually between Randy and Jeremy. He says they were even comparing locations on a map of the property. Elkins realizes Randy has been lying to him out of fear. Randy eventually comes to Elkins' office to get something off his chest. Guilt is a powerful tool for the police. Randy admits he lied because he was afraid of losing his job. He reveals that Jeremy did not just dislike Clark, he hated him. Jeremy saw Clark as a freeloader, a lazy man living for free on his uncle's land. Jeremy had convinced himself that Clark stole $80 from his truck. He had built up a mountain of resentment over a trivial amount of money. The investigators seek concrete evidence. 2 tenants from the Leininger property come forward. They are friends of Jeremy. But hearsay is not enough for an arrest. Elkins turns to technology. He obtains a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. The pings on the towers tell a story of their own. Jeremy's phone moves from the ranch to a friend's house, then to the site where the body was dumped. The friend is identified as John Perry. The phone records of both men mirror each other. They were together. John Perry is the final piece of the puzzle. He is located and arrested as a co-conspirator. Facing significant time in jail, John Perry decides to talk. He wants no part of a murder charge. He tells the story from the beginning. Jeremy had lured Clark to the northeast side of the ranch under the guise of fixing a fence. He then invited Clark to smoke weed with him and John. John thought they were just going to beat someone up to get the stolen money back. He did not expect a cold-blooded execution. Jeremy was agitated and silent. He told everyone to get out of the truck. He confronted Clark about the money. Then, 4 shots rang out. Clark fell to the ground, lifeless. Jeremy had a crazy look on his face. When John refused to touch the body, Jeremy used a rope and a tarp to tie Clark's legs to the back of the truck. He dragged the body through the woods to a backhoe, used the bucket to lift Clark into the truck bed, and then they drove to the river to dispose of him. Jeremy believed he could melt the gun down and the secret would be buried forever. He was wrong. The pings of a cell phone and the conscience of a witness brought the truth to light. Jeremy Leininger was arrested and convicted of murder. He received a sentence of 18 years in the Washington State Penitentiary. John Perry pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 12 months. For Clark's family, the details are agonizing, but there is a sense of closure. Clark Calhoun was a man who deserved to live, a man who was loved. The tragedy brought the family closer together, making them stronger. Detective Elkins became the voice for a man who could no longer speak for himself. As the sun sets over Mount Rainier, the beauty of the mountain remains, but the memory of Clark Calhoun is preserved by those who sought justice. There is a poem that captures the spirit of the detective. It says, "I have been where you fear to be. I have gone where you fear to go. I have seen things you do not wish to see. All these things I have done for you." The case of Clark Calhoun is closed, but the lesson remains. Even in the most beautiful places, justice must stand watch against the darkness. We stand today at the formidable base of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. It is a place of breathtaking majesty, the kind of emerald landscape that defines the Pacific Northwest. Here, the air is crisp, and the silence of the ancient forests suggests a world untouched by the modern chaos of human conflict. It is one of the most beautiful places in this country, a sanctuary where one would never believe they could encounter the cold touch of violence. However, as those of us who study the human condition know all too well, the most serene environments often serve as the backdrop for the most baffling tragedies. This is the narrative of reference case number 16-6893. To preserve the integrity of the truth, we must record the voices of those who lived it. It is a necessary step in the pursuit of justice. In the world of criminal psychology, we often observe that humans are capable of terrible things. They are capable of committing acts of profound cruelty with little or no motivation. It is a chilling reality. In this specific case, we find a 20-year-old young man being interviewed and interrogated about a very dangerous killer. The story begins not with a grand conspiracy, but with a simple expectation. A young man thought he was just going to be picked up to go meet someone. He did not realize he was stepping into a nightmare. The transition from a normal day to a fatal one often hinges on a single, dark impulse. A person acts out of instinct. In this instance, that instinct was to kill. How dangerous is such a person? They are about as dangerous as a human being can get. My name is Ben Elkins, and I spent my long career closing murder cases. I was a major crimes detective for the Thurston County Sheriff Office, located in Olympia, Washington. For over 28 years, I walked the thin line between order and chaos. I always like being challenged because most people do not have the opportunity to see the real evil in society. As a law enforcement officer, you face the unique challenge of figuring out who committed an atrocity and holding them accountable. The case began with a phone call from a woman living on a ranch. She reached out to the Thurston County Sheriff Department to report that her boyfriend had been missing for 3 days. I responded to the call and met Tina Inman. Her boyfriend was Clark Calhoun, a 53-year-old man employed as a handyman on this vast ranch. Clark was a man who had faced hard times in life. The owners of the ranch were friends of his, and they saw an opportunity to help him get back on his feet. Clark was no stranger to farm life. He was skilled at taking care of animals and repairing the various things that inevitably break on a 200-acre property. He was the kind of man who could fix pretty much anything. As part of his employment, he was given a space to park his trailer, allowing him to live on the property at no charge. The ownership of the ranch was a brotherly partnership. One brother lived on the main portion of the property, while the other brother, Joel, owned a smaller section. It was a massive piece of land, pushing 200 acres between the two of them. When I asked Tina when she had last seen Clark, she told me it had been 3 days prior. She explained that on the 28th of December, she, Clark, and another friend named Randy were intending to go shopping in the evening. As they were about to leave, Jeremy Leninger, the son of one of the owners, approached them on a tractor. He asked Clark to stay behind to help build some fences. Clark, being the helpful man he was, agreed. He went with Jeremy, while Tina and Randy continued with their shopping trip. Tina returned late that night. She called out for Clark, but there was no answer. The next morning, he was still gone. By the morning of the third day, the silence became unbearable, and she decided to report him missing. Clark did not carry a cell phone. He used hers. He had left his wallet behind. Tina was adamant that he would never just walk away. The only thing missing was a turquoise and silver ring he often wore. In my experience as an investigator, there are indicators. When I interviewed Tina, I did not pick up on any indicators of foul play on her part. She seemed genuinely distraught. When I asked if Clark had any enemies, she said no. Everyone loved Clark, but she did mention something odd. One of the owners had said that Jeremy had complained about $80 or $150 missing from his truck, and he believed Clark had taken it. Tina knew this was unlikely. If Clark had extra money, he would have shared it for groceries. I knew I could not rely on a single source. I needed to verify the timeline. I located Randy, the friend who had been in the car. Randy confirmed the story. He recalled Jeremy coming to grab Clark for help. Both statements were consistent. When I asked Randy about confrontations, he said everything seemed fine. He claimed to know nothing about the missing money. This left a lingering question. Where did this accusation of theft come from? The next logical step was to interview Jeremy Leninger. Since he was the last person seen with Clark, my investigative antennas were up. I found him on the ranch and invited him into my vehicle for a field interview. It is a tactic we use to put the person on our turf. I asked him about the 28th of December. Jeremy claimed they had started stringing barbed wire, but then Clark said he had to meet someone at the gate. Jeremy introduced a mysterious Mr. X into the conversation. He claimed Clark just walked off to meet a friend. Jeremy also downplayed the missing money, saying it was no big deal. He was cooperative and friendly, seemingly with nothing to hide. Despite his cooperation, I was back at square one. We were concerned that Clark might have died on the property. It was a very cold time of year, and hypothermia was a real threat. I organized a search party. We spent several hours scouring the 200 acres. We coordinated with a rescue dog organization. These dogs have an olfactory sense 600 times greater than a human. They can pick up a scent in the air with remarkable precision, but at the end of the day, we found nothing. No blood, no clothing, no Clark. Weeks passed. We put up missing person posters all over town. For Clark's family, the reality of his disappearance began to sink in. Missing persons are usually found quickly. If they are not, it often means they cannot come home. Then, 2 environmental scientists conducting water samples in a river 2 counties away noticed something. Half submerged in the silt of the riverbed was the body of a Caucasian male. They notified the Cowlitz County Sheriff Office. Detective Lorenzo Gladstone responded. They were aware of the missing person bulletin I had issued. When they saw a silver and turquoise ring on the hand of the body, they knew they had found our man. The discovery shifted the investigation from a missing person search to a homicide. Clark was found without socks or shoes. During the autopsy at the Cowlitz County Coroner Office, the removal of the river silt revealed the grim truth. Clark had been shot twice with a large caliber weapon. The doctor retrieved a bullet, which we identified as a .45 caliber round. This was a significant lead. If we found a suspect, we would be looking for a .45 caliber handgun. The news was devastating for Clark's family. He was a man who had his ups and downs with drugs and alcohol, but he was working hard to reconnect with his children and grandchildren. He was excited about seeing them on New Year's Day. He was a kind, gentle man at his core, and he did not deserve this end. The investigation now focused on the ranch at the base of Mount Rainier. Jeremy Leninger was our primary person of interest. We learned that Jeremy lived with his parents, Joel and Karen, in close proximity to where the body was discovered. We obtained a search warrant for their residence. When we arrived, Karen was shocked to hear about Clark. She claimed her husband, Joel, had told her Clark moved to California. This was a red flag. Why would Joel lie to his wife about Clark's whereabouts? As we executed the warrant, the situation turned volatile. Karen called Joel, and he came racing home. He was absolutely out of his mind, ordering us off his property and screaming about his rights. It took 5 deputies to control and detain him. His extreme reaction suggested he was hiding something. Inside the house, in Joel's bedroom, we found an empty holster and a magazine containing .45 caliber ammunition. The ammunition was consistent with the round removed from Clark's body. We brought Joel in for questioning. He claimed he had not seen the gun in months and had reported it stolen in September of 2016. We found a record of this report, which added a layer of complexity. Joel was arrested for obstructing justice and resisting arrest, but we did not have enough to charge him with murder. We were still punching in the dark. I decided to re-interview Randy. This time, I was armed with more facts. Randy finally admitted that he had heard a conversation about burying dead cows on the property and that someone had remarked how easy it would be to bury a body there. Initially, Randy said it was a man named Tyler Frazier who said it. But when I interviewed Tyler, he denied it and claimed it was Randy and Jeremy who were having that conversation. They had even looked at a map of the property to find burial spots. Randy eventually came to my office to get something off his chest. He admitted he had lied because he was afraid of losing his job. He revealed that Jeremy flat out hated Clark. Jeremy viewed Clark as a lazy freeloader who was taking advantage of his uncle. He was obsessed with the idea that Clark had stolen his money. Jeremy had convinced himself that Clark did not deserve to live. We tried to talk to Jeremy again, but he requested a lawyer and refused to speak. We needed concrete evidence. Soon after, Detective Gladstone informed me that 2 tenants living on Joe's property had come forward. Jeremy had confessed to them. In the world of crime, secrets rarely stay secrets. People often suffer from what I call diarrhea of the mouth. I then obtained a warrant for Jeremy's cell phone records. In the modern age, your phone is a silent witness. The records showed Jeremy's phone moving from the ranch to the site where the body was dumped. It also showed he had stopped at the house of a friend named John Perry for 20 minutes. The 2 phones then moved together